here's my review of The Phoenician Scheme. Now, this is a movie that I'm just going to say, I enjoyed this movie, but I didn't love it. It was a good movie, and of course, what made me want to watch this movie is, of course, this is a new Wes Anderson film. And the thing with Wes Anderson is all of his movies, I haven't seen all of them, but all of the movies that I have seen of him are all just so visually interesting and stylistic, where some people say in a lot of movies these days kind of look and feel the same. We have a director that is so just unabashedly creative and just distinct that it's just nice to see one of his films. And I have heard some people say that with this movie, is it kind of time for maybe Wes Anderson to try something different? Because, yes, this is in many ways another Wes Anderson film. And it is a Wes Anderson film that I liked, but I didn't love it. I thought it was good. And I think that if you're a big Wes Anderson film, I would recommend checking this movie out. But at least to me, the plot here was just not as interesting. Although I liked the characters, just the plot here is not as interesting as some of his other films. In this movie, we follow a wealthy businessman named Zaza Korda who becomes a victim of multiple assassination attempts, and due to this, he believes he is going to eventually be killed, and he wants to appoint his only daughter of like his 12 kids, who is a nun, to be the heir to his estate. I will say, Mia Thruppleton here is so good as I don't remember how you pronounce her name. It's like Leslie. It's not Lisa. It's spelled weird. But anyway, I'm just gonna call her Lisa. And I bet people are in the comments gonna probably correct me and say it's pronounced this, and I'm like, yeah, but it was. And I feel like that kind of shows where the characters here aren't terribly interesting. Some of them are, where it's like I couldn't even remember. It's like you couldn't even remember her name, but it's like I feel like that kind of shows like they're not really super compelling or interesting here. Because for me, like I said, I feel like you go to a Wes Anderson film for, yes, the fun character, not necessarily very interesting, but very fun and just quick. Their dialogue is always so snappy. And that's a big part of this movie, as well as, like I said, just he's thwarting assassins, and a lot of it's just business talk. And like any Wes Anderson film, this movie has an all-star cast of Scarlett Johansson, Michael Cera, Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, and Benedict Cumberbatch. But you do have to know, with all of these people, they are not main characters. They're really only in it just for a little bit. Where I feel like, part of me, that's what I love about Wes Anderson, or the idea that he puts so many big name actors in here, but he never really makes them the lead. But I feel like, at least in this case, Benicio del Toro is so good in this movie that it's like, who cares, you know? It's like, I love all these other actors, but it's like, he's just so good. I'm like, he's an interesting enough character for me to not really care, or not really necessarily be disappointed that some of these other characters and other big name actors don't get a chance to shine. But his characters are all very interesting. And just all of his characters, like Bjorn, played by Michael Cera here, they just are very fascinating and fun, where in here he plays an entomologist, and there are just funny little scenes in the movie where he'll just know facts about certain insects and bugs and stuff, and it's just fascinating. Like I said, this movie is good, but I will say, like, the main plot here is just not super compelling, of a lot of these people, of him starting this infrastructure plan, this business, and a lot of other people trying to bring him down because he's a wealthy businessman. He's really rich. Of course, a lot of people are going to hate him just because he's rich. And he maybe has done some questionable things. And he's a character where Zaza Korda is not necessarily like a very good person, but you could tell he does sometimes have like, sometimes he cares, but he's just feels like he's got that like cold-heartedness of an evil businessman that just feels so classic and scummy. But in a way, Benicio is such a good actor. I'm not going to act like I've really seen him in anything. I don't know if I have. I think this might be the first movie I've seen him in, but he's so good here, where it's like, he's just so compelling. And of course, we're talking about a Wes Anderson movie, like any of his films. You just have to talk about just the gorgeous cinematography. And in fact, where there was this times in this movie where it's like I just wasn't really super into the plot. I wasn't finding it compelling. I didn't really care. But his cinematography, like every single moment, is just like, wow, it's gorgeous. I love looking at it. This is so much fun. These characters are so much fun. This is a beautiful movie. This is a beautifully acted movie. These characters are fascinating. It's really just, I mean, yeah, the main story for me, it just wasn't super particularly interesting. But because the characters are so interesting, because these sets are so interesting, because this is such a beautiful movie, because these actors are so good at what they do, because of the dialogue is so good, I feel like it makes up for what a story for me I didn't find to be super compelling. And in terms of like all these performances, like Mia Threppleton as Lisa, as this nun, is just so interesting. And there's this kind of back and forth dialogue between her and her father Corda of her being this nun, and then them kind of almost bickering about religion too. And it's just little fascinating conversations like that that are just so fun. And the way Wes Anderson writes his dialogue, the way the camera moves, and how quick each line is delivered, it's just fascinating. For even a classic argument like that, of just that back and forth between father and daughter about something as important as personal beliefs, it's just so intriguing, even if it's been done a million times and anything. It's just beautiful. Also, Jeffrey Wright is very good in this movie. I mean, he's good in everything that he's in. And there's just a really funny scene in this movie where they're doing a blood transfusion with him, and he's just great, as always. Scarlett Johansson, also, always a pleasant to see. I've seen a couple people say that they've never found, and I know some people who don't really particularly care for her as an actress, but to me, I've always enjoyed her, and I mean, I will say I don't think she's not at all a main character. She doesn't really stand out in this movie, but like she's good in this movie for what it is. She's probably only in it for like 10 minutes because this movie isn't that long because there's so many characters. If you see an actor and you want to see it for this actor, oh, I really like that actor. It's like, no, just so you know, no, they are not in this movie that much. It's really just Zaza Corda, Benedict Del Toro's character, Mia Threppleton, and then a little bit more Michael Cera than others. But in terms of these other actors, do not go in because you like those other actors, because they are not a big part of this movie at all. And I will say, the main gimmick of this movie, or say gimmick, or reason to watch it, you just have to know, at least for me, for what I got out of it, is just that Wes Anderson style. That beautiful cinematography, that snappy dialogue, these fun, quirky characters. Because the plot is just not really super compelling to me. I will say also there's a beautiful, I really love this scene at the end where I'm just going to talk some full spoilers here. Even though all my movies are spoilers, you should know that. But just that beautiful scene where like go to heaven, we see heaven. And just the way it's portrayed, it's just so beautiful but yet eerie. And it's in a way where it's like, you could see it's like, yeah, it's just such a Wes Anderson thing to do. And that's why I always appreciate Wes Anderson, is because whether you love him or whether you hate him in terms of his movies, they're always so very much Wes Anderson. He does what he wants, and he does it effectively. You look at a shot like this, and you know who it is. And it's just, there are things like that where in a lot of movies today, it's like, you can go in a movie, watch it, and you don't even know who the director is or even notice anything that stands out. It's just, oh, that was a fun movie. But here it's like, okay, you know this is Wes Anderson. You know that's a shot from a Wes Anderson movie. You know this quick, snappy dialogue between Tom Hanks and Bryan Cranston is just, oh, Wes Anderson wrote that. It's just so distinct. So yeah, I thought that overall this was a good movie, but just the thing that, for me, that I just didn't love about it is just the plot itself and the story itself was not super compelling for me. But the characters I all loved, for the most part. I loved, of course, the cinematography. I thought it was funny. I thought it was fun. And if you like Wes Anderson, you're going to get another Wes Anderson movie. But if you're not, if you're kind of maybe sick of his style, I think you could skip it. Overall, solid.